Well, welcome back to my second episode of Playboy Mysteries. We are on season 3 here, and you are getting just audio today, but I wanted to say quickly before I get into it, I do deeply apologize for keeping my channel for, basically keeping it dormant and on the down low for quite a bit. But I do apologize. I've just been a little bit busy and caught up with things, and I'm just trying to figure out how to manage a few tasks at a time. Anyways, I've been busy that way, but I'm here to bring an interesting story to you guys. But before I get ready to do it, I'll just make my quick intro here. If you are interested in checking out my free audiobook that I did, you can go to justafrenzy.com and check out the free audiobook I did there. Anyways, so I wanted to say I got into a really cool subject that I randomly stumbled upon, which I usually do when it comes to these subjects. Now, I noticed that there was a Playboy photographer who I would like to think, in my opinion, died mysteriously. This is why we call it Playboy Mysteries, because some of it is a mystery. His name is Alexas Urba, and it is spelled Alexasurba. Anyways, he was a Playboy photographer, a prominent one from the years 1965 to 1978. Now, I do believe he died around November 14th, 1989 is what I want to say, at the age of 46. And he was a Lithuanian photographer, and he did quite a few spreads for some big Playmates back in the day. I think he was a photographer for, I want to say, about 6 years. And why I make these videos is because I would like to think, in my opinion, anybody who is associated with Playboy to this kind of degree, and especially for this many years, it seems this Alexis went to one of the Playboy clubs with Hugh Hefner in the 60s, and I do believe Julian Auctions is selling off a couple of photos that he sold of the event with Mr. Hugh Hefner there. And Alexis was quite a big figure in the Playboy world, and the more I got into deep diving into him, I thought it was a really interesting topic at hand. There's literally only one photo of him, and it's posted by somebody else on Instagram. Their username on Instagram is Goldberry Woods, and I guess they own Goldberry Woods Bed and Breakfast Cottages. And they just made a little blurb about him. Who is the guy with the camera, you ask? His name is Alexas Urba. He used to own a property at Goldberry Woods, so I guess he used to own the property, and even they are inquiring about some information about him. Now, I do believe I wanted to say the Sue Williams episode. I will get to that in time. I just want to honestly just wait for the death certificate and get my P's and Q's in order in that way. So, back to the story of Mr. Alexis. He was an occult Playboy photographer. Now, he was into some occult things from my research, and it's clearly it's clear as day if you look at some of the photography that he does is pretty evil looking, but some of the other photography, the energy his photos and photography gives is like almost like in a space age Andy Warhol. Some of his photos, I'm not gonna lie, that aren't evilish. His other photos look phenomenal and ahead of its time, something you'd almost think you would probably see even in the 90s or even, I want to say, now. But yes, a lot of his photos are occult-like, and I don't know, it's very odd to me when you look up his name. You cannot find very much information, of course. That's how it goes with these kinds of subjects. I guess you can't find out much about them, which is odd. You really deep dive into these things, and you really go, well, I should find a couple pictures of him. Since he was such a big, prominent figure in the Playboy world, and he was a photographer for, I want to say, at least 7 years, you figure there's got to be pictures of him together with Hef, and, him behind the scenes. And really, there's only one Instagram photo of him, and it's shared by somebody else, and I'd imagine it's a photograph that they got from someone else. So, if you really do take the time to research his name, he did do a photo set, and he labeled it Black Mass. Now, I told you before that he was into occult things, in my opinion, which all of this, I want to say, by the way, from start to finish, is all just an opinion on public figures with my freedom of speech. But yeah, he named one of his photo shoots Black Mass, and if you Google Black Mass meaning, it says a Black Mass is a ceremony celebrated by various satanic groups. It has allegedly existed for centuries in different forms, blah blah blah. So what I find so odd is that he was such a big prominent figure in the Playboy world. A photographer, took many Playmates pictorials, photos, and worked along with Playboy. I do believe Playboy even had science fiction novels and mystery novels of sorts, which I think is great. I love those kind of novels. Anyways, Playboy had their own brand of novels, and they got Mr. Alexas to kind of incorporate his theme and his artistic views and photography onto their covers of their books that they would release every now and then back in the 60s or 70s. So I wanted to say I stumbled upon a comment from somebody. Ironically, like I always say, the old people are always in the forum discussions. They're always in the forum discussions, and I guess a friend of his or an acquaintance had a story to share, of course, on a forum which is called SIG Forum, which is a Quality in Firearms Quality Discussion Forum group. How random. So I'll read the comment from that. It's from sigforum.com. And it says, back in old days, I represented a photographer that had been the staff photographer for Playboy. His name was Alexas Urba. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. I'm just going to call him Alexas U. Anyways, back to this. He was a Lithian with silver hair and a matching accent. He wore every day a heavy sweater. He would drink and smoke pot in a dark corner at his kitchen table in silence, then suddenly start yelling about Gina Gon and the 100-year curse, and how he would rise from the dead and behead people and put their heads on stakes. Never a dull moment. So this is a comment from somebody in this forum group here, and I'm going to finish the rest. He worked for Playboy during their heydays, 1965 to 1978, which is pretty interesting. He died a couple years after he stopped working, in my opinion. Anyways, I'll read it all over again. He worked for Playboy during their heydays, 1965 to 1978. He would be able to use the black Playboy jet at his discretion to go photograph the most gorgeous women anywhere in the world. In the sample book, he had photos of women from Playboy assignments that were stunning in their artistic form. Unfortunately, very applied to Chicago ad, and Hefner and all his associates' friends referred and called Alexas the Master, and he was the most gifted photographer I ever met. His studio was on the top floor of an old horse barn in what is now River North in downtown Chicago, which is funny. Oh, we'll get into that later. Ireland's restaurant, then turned into Michael Jordan's restaurant, occupied the bottom floors. The studio was the entire top floor. He had every centerfold he shot hanging throughout the studio. He would have parties, and all of the famous artists and writers that worked for and contribute to Playboy would attend. He had a book-type document that he somehow got a hold of, that were Hefner's instructions to the plastic surgeon that told them how he wanted Barbie Ben to look. He also told me that Hefner was, quote-unquote, sick. He left Playboy. Hefner felt abandoned by him, and the two hardly ever spoke again. What a life Playboy provided for him, and what a glimpse for me to see behind the curtain. So this is obviously somebody that had some kind of personal experience for quite some time with this guy, in my opinion. So I really don't know why they would feel the need to post it on quality firearms and quality discussion forum. It would have been more interesting to see him comment that in like a Playboy group forum of sorts, but yes, even the people on Instagram that were sharing his photograph were even interested in wondering, who is this guy? And we're just trying to find out more information. Now, it says he died at 46, which I find pretty young in my opinion. Now, if you do go to the only photo that is posted of him, if you do type in his name, Alexas Urba, photographer, one photo will come up on the images, and it's a photo of a photo. Anyway, for 46, now if you were to look at this guy in this photo for 46, just my personal opinion here, man, he looks like a rough 46. I would like to think I'm not trying to be rude here, but if you see the picture I'm looking at by Goldberry Woods Instagram, they shared, he looks like he's in his he looks like he's in his legit late 60s, and he's 45, so that's a little bit odd. But yeah, back to his occult, in my opinion, allegedly. Someone said somewhere that he was an occult photographer, and I do believe that they did get this guy, who was a prominent figure in the Playboy photography world. He's listed in many of their pages, I'm sure, but they did get him to do their Playboy tarot card set, which was a limited time, and there's actually photos of that if you go and research and Google them up. Now, anytime I run into these mysteries, I just always find it odd, like, well, okay, why is there little information and there's not, too many people asking questions about him, or just myself really included. And there is one article about him that is by the Chicago Tribune, which was posted around the time of his death, and even they weren't saying in the headline he died. It just says Alexas Urba, ex-Playboy photographer. So when you see something like that, you just kind of not think much of it. Even the little blurb before you do click it and click onto it, it's just a sentence or two. So I'd like to think, in my opinion, it looks pretty boring when you see Alexas Urba, 46, a commercial photographer in Chicago for more than 20 years, worked for Playboy magazine from 1965 to 1978, and was noted, and then it gets cut off just from the preview of what you Google here. Now, I would like to think, in my opinion, most people would be bored at that, would not think it's scandalous until you really do Google him and look into him and see that he did die. Now, I'd like to think, in my opinion, 46 is pretty young, which is weird because they say he's in Chicago, and I was researching the Goldberry Woods, and it looks like Gold Woods Bed and Breakfast Cottages is located in Michigan. So he must have been in Michigan for quite some time, even though he was in Chicago, or was born, or even lived in Chicago for a period of time. But however, there must have been some association of him living in Michigan at some point of time here, because this is where it looks like it is. And even they are wondering more about him, and there's not a lot about him, no obituary, nothing. So it kind of, when you see this occult association, in my opinion, allegedly, and then you don't really see a lot about him. I mean, for a person who worked so heavily with Playboy and took so many photographs of Playboy models and Playmates, you figure there would be at least a couple photos of him behind the scenes, like I have seen of other Playboy photographers, where you basically see photos and photographs of them, working in action at their job, at what they're doing with Playboy. Now, with this guy, Alexas you don't really see any photos of him, and it did look like from Julian's auctions photos, I'm not sure if they sold these photos or not, but he did take photographs of, I do believe, something with the Playboy Club in London in the 60s, so he did photograph, I guess, behind the scenes events for Hef, not just Playmates. But it's really interesting when you do look into some of his only a couple of photography pieces that are out there, which, of course there's the Playboy spreads and stuff that he does, but I'd like to think, I think that he is, being a private person, if you know what I mean. Like, after his association with Playboy, it seemed to be after his work was done with Playboy, he shortly passed on. And it doesn't even give a reason or cause of death or, anything like that. Not even, like I said, a simple obituary or anything like that. So it would be really interesting to find out more about him. He did have quite a few spreads with Playboy, and some of this other photography that I'm looking at that he did, I'm wondering if it's even Playboy related, because I do realize he is a photographer. Someone's thumbler here, Psychedelic Jungle, undergroundrockpress.tumblr.com was showing two of his photography, two of his photos from his photography time, whether it would be with Playboy or just something he did with someone else. But I do believe he did do quite a few occult themed photos, which I find very interesting. I just don't understand why, again, there's no information on, no cause of death, no obituary. It doesn't even, I'm assuming he got buried in Chicago, because of this Chicago Tribune article. There's only so much you can read before you have to, unfortunately and sadly, subscribe to read it all. But it's just weird to me, somebody heavily associated with Hugh Hefner. There's not many pictures of even Alexas Urba with Hugh Hefner. I do believe he's photographed quite a few models, like I said, and they do share them every now and then. It looks like on the Playboy page, just to say, here's a throwback of who took the photo, but there's really not a lot about him, which I find a little bit interesting, because he did Surrey Marsh's pictorial, which we all know is the first Playmate shit disturber. She was the first one to write a tell-all book about Playboy and give her thoughts and opinions on being a Playmate, along with Hugh Hefner and Playboy and all that. So Surrey Marsh, by the way, wrote a book. So he was the first one to, she was the first one to really be a shit disturber, pardon me, and write a tell-all book. And yeah, she's another one that on a side note, I wonder is even alive or dead, because some of the other Playmates that I look up, sometimes they tell Playboy in their pictorials just to make themselves sound a little bit more appealing. They will say, like, I'm from Finland or whatever like that, and or I'm from Germany, just to sound a little more exotic, so they'd hire them, and usually, in my opinion, half the time they would. So Surrey Marsh, on a side note, he did photograph Surrey Marsh, who did write the Girl in the Centerfold book. And yeah, I'm legitimately wondering if she's still alive or dead, because she's been the first shit disturber here, to quite the craziest extent that a lot of the Playmates and models have done now. So she was the original one to do that in the 60s, Surrey Marsh. And by the way, Surrey Marsh, I hate to burst the other Playmates bubbles, but Surrey Marsh was actually the first Playmate to also be a Playmate and a Penthouse pet. She appeared in both magazines. Now, when you Google, who is the first Playmate to appear in Playboy and Penthouse, it gives some other answer. But if you do your research, Surrey Marsh was a Playmate in the 60s, and then later on, I do believe, did her Penthouse spread in the 80s. So she would be therefore the first one, considering the dates of the ones that they're claiming on Google. Anyway, Alexas Urba and Surrey Marsh, I wonder if they had a connections of sorts, because she was the first shit disturber to write a tell-all book, and I'm assuming, I have not read it yet, but I have been planning to for quite some time. But I'm wondering if she and him were friends, because I wonder if she's still even alive, and he died only a couple of years after being associated with Playboy. Not saying that there's anything sinister. Maybe, of course, that could just be a coincidence as well, in my opinion. But yeah, if you really do your time and research on this Playboy photographer who was, in my opinion, in the occult world and obviously did some occult themed photos. His life is definitely a mystery and would fall under the category of Playboy mysteries. He was a big photographer. I'm assuming you have and hung out with him for quite a few times and knew some of the more bigger Playmates. So I wonder if him and Surrey Marsh are friends or were friends at some point. But yeah, not much is about him. Again, very odd. If somebody out there does know anything about him, please feel free to comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Season 3 I've been lacking on. I will want to say that I'm going to be doing these from every Wednesday from now on. So every Wednesday from here on out until all these episodes are done, every Wednesday I'll be doing Playboy Mysteries 3. We're kind of more solely focused this season on the male subjects at hand, of course mixed in with the female subjects at hand, whether it be bunnies, playmates, or models, or just people, or even foreign models. But yes, I'm also going to be doing mysteries on, I think, maybe 1 or 2 living subjects, because as you know, these episodes are entirely based on the context of dead people and whether their life is a mystery or not. But yes, I hope you guys do tune in for my next one. I am trying to get all of these other mysteries done and make this the best final season of Playboy Mysteries, Season 3 here. And I do appreciate you tuning in very much. I want to say come back soon, and I will be doing the Sue Williams one where I get just a little bit more information on her, and I'm waiting on some other fans. I really want to get all of those fine details sorted out. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys come back again for my next episode.